The girl couldn't have been more than 16, but the blood on her torn dress told a story older than her years. Samuel Hartwell found her collapsed against his water trough at dawn, clutching a silver locket like it held her very soul. When she looked up at him with eyes the color of storm clouds, he saw something that made his weathered hands tremble, the same terror he'd seen in his own daughter's face the night the Comanches took her 5 years ago. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the morning wind. "Don't let them find me." The girl spoke English, but her braided hair and beaded moccasins told a different tale. Mixed blood, he realized, the kind that belonged nowhere in this harsh territory between two worlds. Samuel had built his ranch on the edge of civilization for a reason, to escape the judgments and complications of town life. At 62, he'd buried a wife, lost a daughter, and learned that survival meant minding your own business. But something about this girl's desperate grip on that locket stopped him cold. "Who's looking for you?" he asked, though part of him already knew he didn't want the answer. She shook her head, tears cutting clean tracks through the dirt on her cheeks. "Bad men, from town. They hurt my family." Samuel's jaw tightened. He'd heard the rumors filtering out from Millbrook, whispers about a half-breed family living in the canyon, about men who thought mixed-blood women were fair game for whatever twisted desires drove them. The kind of men who believed the law wouldn't care about crimes against people who didn't fit neatly into their world. He should turn her away, should point her toward the reservation or the next county over, should protect the quiet life he'd built from the storms that followed girls like this one. Instead, he found himself reaching for her hand. "Come inside," he said. "Let's get you cleaned up." As he helped her to her feet, Samuel caught sight of dust clouds rising in the distance. Riders, moving fast across the open range. His blood ran cold as he counted the shapes. At least 6 men, maybe more. They were still miles off, but closing steady. The girl saw them too. Her grip on the locket tightened until her knuckles went white. "They found me," she breathed. Inside the ranch house, Samuel watched the girl, Maria, she'd told him, scrub the blood from her hands with shaking fingers. The locket lay open on his kitchen table, revealing a tiny daguerreotype of a Comanche woman and a white man, both young and smiling. Her parents, he realized, the family she'd mentioned. "They're dead, aren't they?" he asked gently. Maria nodded, unable to speak. Fresh tears fell onto the photograph. Samuel had seen enough violence in his years to recognize the weight of survivors' guilt. The way she flinched at every sound, the hollow look in her eyes. This girl had watched something unspeakable happen to the people she loved, and now those same men were coming for her. "Why?" he asked, though he dreaded the answer. "My father, he owned land, good water rights. Some men from town, they wanted it. When he wouldn't sell." She couldn't finish, but she didn't need to. Samuel closed the locket with trembling hands. Land disputes, water rights, the oldest reasons for murder in the West, dressed up in the convenient excuse of racial hatred. He'd seen it before. Decent people killed for their property, their deaths justified by the color of their skin or the mixed nature of their heritage. Through the window, the dust clouds grew larger, maybe 10 minutes before they arrived, if that. "There's a root cellar out back," Samuel said. "Storm shelter. You could hide there until—" "No." Maria's voice was stronger now, edged with something that might have been pride or maybe exhaustion. "I'm tired of hiding, tired of running. These aren't lawmen coming, girl. They're killers. Then they'll have to kill me too." Samuel stared at her, seeing something of his lost daughter in her defiant stance. Emma would have been about this age now, if she'd lived. Would she have grown into this same fierce courage? The sound of hoofbeats reached them now, still distant but growing closer. Samuel moved to his gun cabinet, hands steady despite the storm brewing in his chest. He'd sworn off violence after the war, after losing everything that mattered, but some lines, once crossed, demanded an accounting. I can't promise we'll survive this," he said, checking the loads in his rifle. "I know." Maria picked up the locket, fastened it around her neck. "But maybe someone will finally see what they did. Maybe someone will remember my family deserved better." The hoofbeats were closer now. Samuel could make out individual riders through the window. Hard men with harder faces, the kind who did their evil in broad daylight because they'd never faced consequences. Their leader, a tall man with a silver badge that probably meant nothing, called out across the yard. "We know you got her, old man. Send the half-breed out and nobody needs to get hurt." Samuel stepped onto his porch, rifle cradled in his arms. Behind him, Maria stood in the doorway, chin raised despite her fear. The reckoning had begun. 7 men sat their horses in Samuel's yard, forming a loose semicircle that spoke of practiced intimidation. Their leader, Deputy Marshal Crenshaw, though Samuel knew the badge was bought, not earned, dismounted with the casual arrogance of a man who'd never met consequences for his actions. "Hartwell," Crenshaw said, spitting tobacco juice into the dirt, "you're harboring a criminal, a murderer who killed her own family for their land rights." "That's a lie," Maria said from the doorway, her voice carrying across the tense silence. Crenshaw smiled, showing tobacco-stained teeth. "Sweet little savage wants to tell stories. Well, we got witnesses say, I different. Say you poisoned your own parents, then burned their cabin to hide the evidence." Samuel's grip tightened on his rifle. He could read men like books after 62 years on this earth, and everything about Crenshaw's easy confidence screamed of rehearsed lies. These weren't lawmen seeking justice. They were killers covering their tracks. "Funny how your witnesses show up after her family's already dead," Samuel said. "Careful, old man. That kind of talk sounds like you're taking sides." Crenshaw's hand drifted toward his sidearm. "This doesn't concern you. Hand over the girl and you can go back to your quiet retirement." Behind Crenshaw, the other riders shifted in their saddles. Samuel recognized 2 of them, Bobby Ketchen and his brother Dale, low-life drifters who'd do anything for whiskey money. The others were strangers, but they all had the same predatory look of men who enjoyed other people's suffering. "She's under my protection," Samuel said. "Protection?" Crenshaw laughed, the sound harsh as a crow's call. "You're one old man with 1 rifle. We're 7 armed men with legal authority." "Legal authority to murder a girl?" "Legal authority to arrest a wanted criminal." Crenshaw pulled a folded paper from his vest. "Got a warrant right here, all proper and legal." Samuel didn't need to see the paper to know it was either forged or bought, but in this territory, far from any real law, it might as well have been written by God himself. "You boys know what really happened," Samuel said, addressing the other riders. "You know whose blood is really on whose hands. Question is whether you can live with yourselves after." Bobby Ketchen spat and looked away. Dale's jaw tightened, but he didn't meet Samuel's eyes. "Good. Shame was a weapon too, if you knew how to use it." "Last chance, Hartwell," Crenshaw said. "Hand her over or we take her over your dead bull." Samuel stepped forward, placing himself squarely between the riders and Maria. The afternoon sun cast his shadow long across the yard, and for a moment he felt the weight of every year, every loss, every compromise that had brought him to this moment. "Then you'll have to kill me first," he said. The silence stretched like a held breath. Then Crenshaw drew his gun. Time slowed as Crenshaw's Colt cleared leather. Samuel's rifle came up smooth as silk, muscle memory from a war he'd tried to forget. But before either man could fire, Maria stepped out from behind him, arms raised. "Stop," she said. "Please, no more killing." "Maria, get back." "No." She looked at Samuel with eyes full of gratitude and sorrow. "You've done enough, more than anyone else would have." She walked forward, past Samuel's protective stance, until she stood alone in the middle of the yard. The silver locket caught the afternoon sun, sending tiny rainbows across the dust. "My name is Maria Santos," she said, her voice carrying clearly to every rider. "My father was James Santos. My mother was Evening Star of the Comanche. They owned 40 acres in Canyon Creek. With water rights they bought legal and fair from the territorial office." Crenshaw's gun never wavered, but something flickered in his eyes. Fear, maybe, or recognition of truth when he heard it. "3 days ago these men came to our home," Maria continued. "They wanted my father to sell for 1/10 of what the land was worth. When he refused, they shot him down in cold blood. When my mother tried to run, they shot her too. Then they burned our cabin to hide the evidence." Bobby Ketchen's horse shifted restlessly. The youngest rider, barely older than Maria herself, had gone pale as milk. "I hid in the root cellar until they left. Then I buried my parents with my own hands and ran." Maria's voice broke slightly, but she pushed on. "I'm no murderer. I'm just a girl who lost everything and has nowhere left to go." "Pretty story," Crenshaw said, but his voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. "But we got evidence says errant." "What evidence?" Samuel asked. Bodies that conveniently can't testify? A burned cabin that could have been torched by anyone? We got witnesses. You got accomplices, Samuel said flatly. Men who will swear to whatever lies you tell them, long as they get their cut of 40 acres with good water. The young rider at the back of the group suddenly spoke up. Crenshaw, maybe we should— Shut up, Tommy, Crenshaw snapped. But damage was done. Doubt was spreading through the group like cracks in ice. Maria reached up and unclasped her locket. She held it out toward the riders, open to reveal the photograph inside. This is all I have left of them, she said. A picture and memories of two people who loved each other and hurt nobody. Is that worth killing an old man for? Is 40 acres worth that much blood? Samuel saw the exact moment when the lie collapsed. Tommy, the young rider, looked at that photograph and saw not a criminal, but a daughter mourning her parents. His face crumpled with shame. I can't do this, Crenshaw, Tommy said, reining his horse around. I signed up to arrest a murderer, not gun down some girl and an old rancher. Two more riders followed his lead, peeling away from the group. The careful choreography of intimidation began to fall apart. But Crenshaw's gun never wavered from Maria's heart. Doesn't matter, he said. 3 witnesses are enough. The shot rang out across the yard, echoing off the distant mountains like thunder. For a heartbeat, everything seemed frozen. Dust motes hanging in the air, horses stamping nervously, the smell of gunpowder sharp and acrid. Then Crenshaw toppled from his saddle, Samuel's rifle smoking in his weathered hands. Anyone else want to discuss evidence? Samuel asked quietly. The remaining riders exchanged glances. Bobby Ketchen's hand twitched toward his gun, but his brother grabbed his wrist. Let it go, Bobby, Dale said. Man's dead, girl's free, nothing here worth dying for. The hell there ain't. That was murder, Dale said firmly. And I got no stomach for murdering. Girls and old men. We're done here. One by one, the riders turned and rode away, leaving Crenshaw's body sprawled in the dust. Samuel kept his rifle ready until the last of them disappeared over the ridge, then slowly lowered the weapon. Maria was staring at Crenshaw's still form, tears streaming down her face. It's over, Samuel said gently. Is it? She looked up at him. What about the land, the water rights? Someone else will come for them eventually. Samuel considered this. Maybe, but maybe not. Territory's changing, girl. Real law is coming, whether folks like it or not. And you got something now you didn't have before. What's that? Witnesses. That young Tommy, maybe some of the others, they know the truth now. Truth has a way of spreading, given time. Maria nodded, wiping her eyes. What happens to me now? Samuel looked at his empty ranch, his quiet life that would never be quite the same. Well, I reckon a man my age could use some help around here. Someone who knows the land, understands water rights. He paused. Someone who needs a place to heal and figure out what comes next. I don't have anywhere else to go. Then stay, as long as you need. They buried Crenshaw at the edge of Samuel's property, with no marker save a pile of stones. The dead man's horse they turned loose to find its own way home, carrying empty stirrups as its only message. That evening, as the sun painted the mountains gold and crimson, Maria helped Samuel prepare supper. She moved around the kitchen like she belonged there, and maybe she did. Maybe sometimes families weren't born, but chosen, forged in the crucible of shared danger and mutual respect. Years later, when Maria had grown into a woman of strength and compassion, when she'd married young Tommy who'd returned to make amends and found love instead, when she'd built a school for children of all colors on land she'd bought with money from water rights her parents had died to protect. Years later, she would remember this day. She would remember an old rancher who had chosen to stand between her and the darkness. Who'd risked everything for a stranger's daughter because it was right. Who'd shown her that sometimes, in a world full of hatred and greed, one person's courage could change everything. And every evening at sunset, she would touch the silver locket at her throat and whisper a prayer of gratitude for parents who'd loved her enough to die for her future, and for a stubborn old man who'd loved her enough to live for it. The West was changing, one choice at a time, one stand at a time, one heart at a time, and in the golden light of another day's ending, that was enough.